This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Watch the greenbacks tumble.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? All right, here we go. Your dial set correctly to USAPrepares.com, and we're broadcasting 2 hours today from the Commonwealth of Virginia. Yeah. Commonwealth of Virginia, 24-hour consumerism right here in Northern Virginia. Very close, way, way, way too close to these politicians for my comfort. As a matter of fact, I feel really uncomfortable carrying my .45 on my side, open carry here, because I believe that someone is going to call the cops on me. They're going to arrive with a SWAT team, and I'm going to get shot. So I've been concealed carry for the entire time that I've been here in Northern Virginia. Looking forward to getting back to America this weekend, the Ozark Mountains. I was talking to our son, who's been managing the farm, and we have had torrential rains. Hey, Rick Miller's with us. Welcome, Rick.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm
good
firing on half cylinders, but I've got some interesting things to talk about.
Rick, you're firing on half, so that'd be 12 running,
yeah,
right?
No, I wished I were a super engine like that, but I'm just clickety-clack.
Hey, Rick, seriously, you've been to the farm, but you know that low water bridge, so if you come out of our driveway, you make a left onto the gravel road, and we go through that dip, 18 inches of water in that dip.
Jesus, that's unbelievable. You know, the weather here is very strange. The leaves are already falling. Mm-hmm. This is like 2 months early, and we have forest fires that have made national news. I'm in the center of it. It's really kind of very weird to be here. That's one of the reasons I'm firing on slow cylinders. You know, to go outside, I have to wear a respirator.
When you say a respirator, are you talking about
street across the street? You can't see that. That's how thick the forest fire smoke is.
Rick, when you say this, I'm really sad that it's happening, but it's good that we're talking.
It's all part of a grand plan because it's not man-made. You know, that forest fires are natural. I mean, they are important and, recycle the earth in certain ways. And fortunately, we're going to maybe get recycled in the process. I don't know. It's interesting.
Rick, it's good that we're talking about it, and I'll tell you why. A forest fire is something that you can be killed very quickly, as our hot shots have been, and many others. Stan Deo and I were talking about it, and there were forest fires coming around his property in the Rockies, and you've got them. They're in California right now.
Yeah, next door. That's where I am. We have the big ones here right now. San Diego is covered, but I'll tell you, we've lost a couple of friends. I actually got a couple of people I know that were killed just a couple of days ago because of this.
Oh, man. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, Rick.
Well, it's all part of what's going on in life. Saturday, I watched a woman in front of me get killed. I watched it happen. And instead of stopping like everybody else did, I did not want to get involved, and I just kept on going. And I watched her truck flipped in downtown Grants Pass. Flipped. Made the news. It's just people are acting crazy now because of the weather changes and things. It's affecting everybody's behavior.
Well, that's something I'd like to talk about today. What caused this truck to flip?
Well, people are in Grants Pass, Oregon. Our main primary streets have a regulated flow of traffic, and so the lights change at a regular moment. So if you keep it a certain space from each other and you don't try to speed, everything flows. And what happened is this girl, I watched her coming up behind me and jumping 2 lanes back and forth and cutting people off. And what happened was the light turned orange, I stopped, and she came up behind me, went to the right, which is the parking space, and cut in front of me to make the light, not going on to my left, but on my right, and then came across 3 lanes of traffic and got clipped by side traffic coming across on the light, and her truck got flipped. And nobody saw it. It was just so fast. And now apparently there were drugs involved and some other things, but I watched it happen. And, you know, like you're carrying your gun in public in Virginia, that would be in the great book of magic, the thing they call the spell of invisibility, low profile, where you do not get noticed. You just keep on going.
Yeah, and that's
keep on trucking.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to do here, because I'll tell you, just going through a store with a firearm, which is well, you know, Rick, it's common where I live, right, in the Ozarks. I mean, you've probably never seen me without it.
Armed and Dangerous. By the way, that's an exceptionally great movie. It's called Reds 2, Retired and Extremely Dangerous. What a hoot that movie was. Helen Mirren and her Gatling gun, and her guy says, "I love it when you're about to squeeze the trigger, your toes curl."
Hey, Rick.
Virginia is a serious change in your environment.
Well, it really is. It didn't, you know, I used to live in Southern Virginia, and I could open carry and everything was fine. But up here, wow.
Yeah, well, that's because everybody's mindful, about that couple that were smoking marijuana, and then the SWAT team came in and took their daughter. People trying to mind other people's business. We can talk about that as a system of magic and philosophy, if you'd like. The idea that as long as you're doing your own thing, you shouldn't be bothered by others. And it's the control issue, where everybody wants everybody else to behave the same.
Rick, I went to a library, and they had a sign there that basically said, "We're watching you, and we're going to report." and not only are we watching you, we're going to report suspicious behavior to the police department.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. That's what they did with Nazis in the early 30s, when they trained the children to be stoolies.
Well, and that's something that I would like to caution everyone about, and here's why. Rick, I've told my children for a very, very long time, and I've told them, and I've told our neighbors, if you call 911, let's say you hear a noise at your neighbors, and you call 911. When they show up, let's say it's a domestic dispute. Let's say the husband and wife are having an argument. Well, when the cops show up, they can arrest both adults, haul them to the clink, charge them, and they will become felons. And they will not be able to have a concealed carry permit. They will not be able to legally own a firearm. So
That's the whole idea of the Second Amendment, trying to take that away from us.
Mm-hmm. So that's why, class, you don't want to call 911. And you hear ridiculous things, like people go to McDonald's and they call 911 because their hamburger wasn't cooked right, or they got a hamburger and they want a cheeseburger. I mean, ridiculous things. Well, calling 911 on your own family is the last thing you want to do.
It actually gives them a right to some of your civil rights.
Mm-hmm. Johnny Delirious was on the air with us a few days ago, and Johnny Delirious is in Texas. And he became a drug addict, and he said this all on the air. So I'm not revealing any secrets. He said that he became a drug addict, a cocaine addict, and his brother called the cops on him And he came to his brother's front door, and he walked inside to Johnny Delirious's home, and then he stepped backward. He said, "You need help." And he stepped backward, and then the SWAT team came in, threw Johnny Delirious down on the floor, put their boot between his shoulders, stepped on him, handcuffed him, hauled him off to jail. What I'm saying is, there's no need for this. There's absolutely no need for the cops to come and beat people up. As a matter of fact, there's a post on the website, page 1, USA Prepares, and what happened is a woman was a shoplifter, Rick. She shoplifted $388 worth of women's clothing. Let me just bring up my notes. Okay, so she shoplifted $388 worth of clothing. 2 cops show up, and one of them pummels her. One of them pummels this woman, beats her up, punches her in the face, sends her to the hospital. Her eye is swollen shut, 70% impaired vision right now for shoplifting. Now, what the heck is a woman doing getting beat up by the cops? I don't get it. You know, they've got tasers. They've got 2 cops. 2 cops have to beat up on this one woman in Iowa. Now, granted, shoplifting is not a nice thing to do. It's illegal to shoplift. It's stealing. But to pummel a woman for shoplifting is out of control. It's police brutality. That cop needs to be arrested, tried, convicted, and jailed. We can't have these bullies on the street.
Well, you know, that's the problem with law enforcement. They're supposed to be there to serve and protect. And what happens is, like with all things, people reach a level of incompetence where the bully individual, which is not necessarily just a cop, will reach his position of incompetence where he makes mistakes just like we all do. And when you make a mistake, there is a thing called forgiveness and understanding. But when it's not allowed to be somehow socially corrected, what happens next is some of our civil rights are violated. And the civil rights of a policeman are just as valid. I mean, the thing is, the law is for all. And that's the idea that every man and every woman has equal rights.
Rick, hold that thought.
It doesn't matter whether you're a cop or not.
Hold that thought. Rick Miller, Vin Finelli, USAPrepares.com. We'll be right back. With us, and we're talking about behavior, and Rick and I have independently noticed from 2,000 miles apart that people are behaving differently lately than they have, and the behavior is not good. It's getting worse. Rick, I was noticing that people have shorter fuses. They're more angry. And, you know, some of that might be tied to the economy. But there are other factors. What do you think?
Well, yeah, you wanted to talk about the solar flares that are currently reaching a maximum peak right now. The fact that the magnetic pole of the sun is shifted, and it's going to change the heliosphere and the kinds of structure in the water in your body. It's like the lunar phase of the moon when you notice that during full moons everybody goes crazy. Well, there are other more subtle effects going on that are affecting everything. And when I say everything, I mean literally. And when you have control fantasies like Virginia, trying to control, your behavior and the way you carry a gun, you're just going to have to tune into the fact that people are going to be a little bit different right now. And it's going to affect everything. I'm surprised we didn't have a grid go down last week. I'm surprised, and when I say a grid go down, there was a massive coronal ejection, and it didn't hit the Earth. It was in a different direction. We're very lucky, because if we had, we might not be even having radio right now. That's how bad the coronal mass was. It would have probably disrupted everything for a good week. with that said, what are you going to do if that actually did happen? Because we are seeing weather changes. We are seeing other kinds of behavior that are changing. What are you doing to be prepared? How would you get home back to Springfield? How would you do that if there was nothing that worked right now? And your wife, your son. By the way, I don't know who called you to get me back on the air, but thank you for that. Was that your son?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, I woke him up or something. It's an interesting thing that I don't think anybody's ready for. I think that we all talk about it. Nobody's actually witnessing the fact that we're in a global weather event right now, historical. I mean, classic, and to the event of everything. I have other things I could talk about as well. Where you are in Virginia, there's a whole bunch of tunnels where you live. I mean, and they were dug for the, the Underground Railroad. They were dug for animal crossings. They were dug for, Virginia is famous for its tunnels. That means there's probably someone underneath you right now.
Rick, I worked with a guy from a telephone company many years ago in Virginia, and he was telling me that there is a secret underground government base right here in Virginia, so that if something happens to Washington, D.C., these guys are in place. He said he was there. He saw it. He actually installed some of the equipment, the telecommunications equipment.
Communications, right. There's tunnels that go all the way from Boston all the way down into Key Largo and Florida, and without ever having to see the light of day. And some of these tunnels are very deep. When I say deep, I mean more than a mile down.
Rick, isn't the temperature pretty hot down a mile deep?
Sometimes not. Antarctica is nice and tempered warm because it's thermal. It varies because the Earth has a whole different ecosystem than we might otherwise imagine.
Rick, you mentioned a full moon, and I've talked to nurses in emergency rooms, and they say there absolutely is a correlation between the emergency room activity, the number of patients.
That werewolf gene in you, huh?
Well, Rick, seriously, they say that there are more events that happen at a full moon than any other day of the month in emergency rooms. That's what they've told me. When we come back, let's talk about that for a couple minutes, and then let's talk some more about weather behavior, because I think that we're acting pretty nasty to each other. We'll come right back and talk about it. Rick Miller, Vincent Finelli. Rick, I was thinking during the break about this bad behavior, and we're seeing more and more bad behavior by the police, and not just the police, by a lot of people. But the police carry weapons, mace, tasers, handcuffs, two-way radios, extra magazines, billy clubs, and they've got all kinds of
brass knuckles. Let's see what else.
Yeah, and then they carry a disposable firearm so they could throw it away if they shoot somebody. I mean, they have all kinds of tricks up their sleeves. And I I went to school with a guy, and at my 25th reunion, we're all talking about, so what are you doing? I don't know, what are you doing? That kind of stuff. And so I went up to this one guy, and we were talking. I said, so what are you doing? And he had a position where I won't mention the elected person's name, but very, very high level in a state government. And he said he was in charge of the security for the police for this, elected person. And I thought, are you kidding? You were the guy that caused all kinds of problems in high school. And he looked at me like, come on, no, I was a good guy. I'm thinking, no, you weren't. So anyway, I think some of these cops are these guys that like being bullies in high school, and then they get a uniform, badge, a club, a belt, and radios. But here's where I'm going with this, Rick. So you take that kind of a person, and you give them a car, a brand new one, and you outfit it with all kinds of electronic gear, two-way radio, a high-powered two-way radio. They have their cell phones with them all the time because they're talking on the phone while they're driving. Tell me I'm not speaking the truth there. Cops are busy when they're not, when they're on the phone, talking to their friends while they're driving. You can see it in their body language. Now they have cameras, they've got radar guns, they've got computers, and they've got all kinds of microwave type equipment. Now they're in a box. They're in their car. They're air-conditioned. They're actually in our air-conditioned vehicle riding around. I have a feeling, Rick, that all of that electromagnetic radiation is contributing to making these guys nuts.
Well, they had to start with a loose screw to begin with, Yeah. The idea of law enforcement is changing, and that had to do with what I consider the difference between natural and civil law, Hobbes and Kant. And when you give up some of your rights for safety or protection, who was that? Benjamin Franklin. You lose it all. And that's the bottom line about, the law is for all. I quote that from Aleister Crowley. Means that every man and every woman has their own natural rights, and as long as you behave to your standard, nobody else has a right to say nay. And that's the bottom line. And what's happening is that there are people that think they know what's better for you than yourself. And that's why Amsterdam and the Netherlands used to give you the right to life and the right to death. That if you wanted to go out and kill yourself, that you had that right to do that. That maybe was make the gene pool better. Who knows? What I am going to say is the idea of imposing someone's belief system on you is wrong. Now, if you're breaking the law where you're harming someone else, not yourself, that's different. But in our country, if it's believed that you're hurting yourself, the concepts of intervention and the rights of others, I think there's a serious question there in terms of how we live and why we live, and that quality of life is being eroded because of taking these rights away from us.
Rick, and that's one of the things that I'm doing here in Virginia. I've met a lot of people, and I'm interviewing people, and I see more police here. And so I'm doing an investigative report about what happens in society when people become more and more afraid and turn over their rights to the government and call for help at all kinds of levels and who are not preparing for themselves. Let me give you an example.
I know that
Rick.
George Orwell would be spinning in his grave right now if he were to realize just exactly how accurate his concerns were for Big Brother and the idea of surveillance, for mindful behavior, that kind of thing, and the privacy of your home. That thing in Texas where the couple were sitting there having a marijuana, 100 million people do that every day, and to have a brother come in and then step back and have a whole bunch of SWAT teams come in, it's just, it's crazy.
Rick, I'm not a drug user. However, I am a libertarian. And I think that the government's place is not beating up little people. I don't know if there's much difference between alcohol consumption and cannabis. I really don't know. But
there's more people that are killed by alcohol than there are cannabis. I can tell you that.
Okay, then SWAT teams ought to descend on Seagrams and Gordons.
Yeah, that's the middle of Virginia. Go figure. That's how they pay those taxes so they can have more law enforcement.
Well, okay. So Rick, where I'm going with this is people have given up their responsibilities to take care of their own affairs, and so I'm helping while I'm here, I'm helping some families prepare. So yesterday, or during the week, I decided, all right, I will help these guys with several families with some plans to prepare and what they need to get. And I said, okay, first we're going to get some shelving so we can buy some cans of food and whatever we want to put for we're going to get it right now. And so I went shopping. I went to Home Depot. I went to a lot of the big box stores looking for Gorilla brand shelving, the same kind of shelving that I have in Missouri that I purchased many years ago. Well, it used to be available at Sam's Club. I've called all the Sam's clubs in the surrounding area. There's a bunch of them. None of them has Gorilla shelving, the heavy-duty shelving. No one has it in stock. So I called the manufacturer of Gorilla shelving, and they said, "Oh yeah, well you'll have to order it online. You can get it through Amazon. You can order it online, have it shipped to Home Depot, 7 to 10 days." Well, I'm not going to be here 7 to 10 days. What I'm saying is, Rick, we have changed. How is it possible that I'm surrounded by homes? $250,000 and up, and they don't have anywhere near here, literally within a half-hour drive of what they don't have Gorilla shelving. How is that possible? What I'm saying is these people that live here have no idea about how to store heavy things on shelving because they don't. They don't store heavy things on shelving like 12 cases of cans of beans or corn or green beans or pasta sauce or pasta. They don't store it. They don't have it.
Yeah,
they don't
different
live
kind of
like
mindset. It's that's why you have places where you choose to live.
I was talking with Mrs. Finelli. We were in the truck and we were going looking for the shelving, and she mentioned to me that we're going to need to go shopping one of these months. And I said, when was the last time we went? She said, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago. So Rick,
yeah,
our lifestyle's completely different from here.
Yeah.
Now here, I've heard people say, and I've been with them. Hey, you hungry? What do you want to eat? Oh, do you want to go get Chinese? Do you want to get pizza? I would. That discussion doesn't even happen in my house because going for Chinese food is 110 miles round trip.
Yeah. I know that's why you have weird people living in Lebanon, Oregon.
Hey, Rick. So we talked about these the electromagnetic radiation that I believe that the police are being subject to, and they're hopping in these cars and they have no idea. Well, I've been in a few homes here in Northern Virginia, and they have Wi-Fi. They have these wireless routers, and I have a box in front of me. It's a Netgear wireless router. It's a 2.4 gigahertz router. That's the kind of frequency that's used in a microwave oven. Now, Rick, I remember many years ago having a microwave oven back when they first came out. And they had rotary timers back then, and they had power level settings. And you could set them at like 1%, 2%, and you could turn up the power level all the way to 100%. What I'm saying is you could put a hot dog in there and you could cook it at 1% for a long time and it would cook, or you could cook it at 10% and it would cook 10 times faster, or you could cook it at power level, full level, and it would cook 10 times faster than that. But you could cook it at low power for a long time. That's what I think's happening with these wireless routers in these homes, Rick. People are putting them near them. They're putting them in their family rooms, where they are slowly cooking every living thing in the room. Actually,
what
in the house.
that's actually doing is destructuring the water inside your body. And that water determines the health or non-health of a given organ. Mm-hmm. And the fact that we're living in an ELF soup environment right now with the cell towers that you talked about in your own town, stopping automobile engines. The whole idea of this is it has increased 10 times in the last 4 years. And it's like putting a smart meter on your home. There's a whole movement now to stop this kind of stuff. It's a type of encroachment that nobody has a real handle on the full extent of what your LD50 ratios are. And it goes across the board in a variety of other things. You know, Fukushima, right now, today, Grace Thorne put a post on my Facebook, you know, showing that now almost everything on the West Coast is tainted. The milk, the fish, everything has now got exaggerated levels of radiation. And when you talk about radiation, that's a certain bandwidth. We're talking about microwave. That's another one.
Rick, I'm so glad you mentioned that. That's one of the items on my list of topics to discuss with you. Fukushima, the radiation, and how it's leaking from the groundwater into the ocean, and all the oceans are connected. Let's talk about that when we come back. Dr. Richard Allen Miller, Vin Finelli, USAPreparedness.com. We're going to talk about radioactivity. We'll be right back. Last night, I was on the phone for a couple hours with some talk show hosts. I was on the phone with Joyce Riley, Sam Bushman, Michael Evans, John Moore, and I were there, and we're all there. And we were talking about if one of us has a problem, if one of us is taken out, the others are coming to the rescue. Okay? So what I'm saying is, here we have 5 broadcasters, all broadcasting at the same time. Okay? Some of us would think that, maybe we're competing for audience. Well, we're working together. So if one of us gets taken out, or several of us, the rest will come to the rescue. I'm serious. And one of the things that we're talking about is Joyce Riley is working on a solution for smart meters. This would be a document-type solution. I'm not sure. She hasn't shared with us all the details, but when she does, I'll let you know. So Joyce Riley is working on that, and she's one of us here at GCN. And so I'm proud to be alongside Joyce Riley. Also, you might have heard me mention that what I've done for my smart meter, Rick, since you mentioned it, is, I don't know if you saw it, but I put a coffee can over mine. I use the metal coffee can, the 3-pound size. Well, it used to be 3 pounds. It's now like 33 ounces. It's a metal coffee can, and they have a plastic resealable lid. So what I did was I cut the inside of the lid out, put some kerfs in it so it fit right over the glass part of the meter, attached it to the can, just slipped it on the can, and put the can over the electric meter. So my electric meter is completely surrounded on the back by the metal box that it's attached to. On all sides and on the front, the glass is completely covered. So my smart meter is not transmitting microwave radiation out of the glass part of the meter as it used to. And so the our electric company's been out a couple times trying to figure out what's going on. But so that's what I've done, because I'm really concerned that glass looks really expensive, and I'm afraid it might get hit by a softball or baseball or something.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
You know what you need is a tri-field meter. They're inexpensive. You can find them all over the internet. They're called tri-field meters, and they measure the electromagnetic radiation in 3 bands. That's why they're a tri-field, and that will tell you where your hot spots are in your home. And I absolutely recommend that everybody measures their hot spots, because that will determine where you're going to put your bed and where you're going to put your head. It used to be that you wanted your head facing north. That's all changed now, predicated on, the hot spots in your room. You do not want to be near a hot spot. That means putting something up near your head, like even a clock radio, has radiation off it because of the electromagnetic fields in it.
Yeah, even the, Rick, as I remember reading, the synchronous clocks, the kind that have the hands that move, the analog type clocks that General Electric used to make, those things really had a lot of electromagnetic radiation. Rick, I'm looking right now on eBay. I typed in tri-field. There's a tri-field meter. It's called 100XE, and I see prices as high as $195 and as low as $143.99.
You can get them cheaper. Actually, a good tri-field meter shouldn't be more than $110, 120 max. And that's a really good one, and they're pretty accurate. Mm-hmm. What they do is they'll give you can put it next to the microwave, watch that meter read. That'll tell you exactly what that microwave is doing. And you must remember, what microwave radiation does is that it heats things up from the inside out because of the quantum size of the frequency band, and that is destructuring the water. And that is the same experiment when the grade school kid fed a plant destructured water. The plant could not even identify it and will die.
Rick, when we come back, let's talk about the electromagnetic radiation, what microwaves do, how they work to heat food in a microwave oven. And I think when we start talking about this, it will wake people up as to why it's so darn dangerous to have microwave radiation around them. And they're going to want to get a tri-field meter. Not that we're in the business of selling them, but they're going to want to know. Rick Miller, Vin Finelli, USAPrepares.com. We'll be back right after the top of the hour news and commercial breaks.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Watch the greenbacks tumble.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Hour number 2 of USAPrepares.com. Talking with Dr. Richard Allen Miller, and Rick brought up the tri-field meter just before the top of the hour break. So I picked up the phone during the commercial announcements and the top of the hour news, and I talked with a gentleman. His name is Bill Lee. Bill Lee, L-E-E. He's the CEO of Alpha Lab Incorporated in Salt Lake City. And he and I were talking for just a couple minutes about the tri-field meter Model 100XE. I asked him if it would be all right if I copied and pasted some information about the tri-field meter on the website, usaprepares.com. So if you want to see it, it's on page 1 right now. It's the tri-field meter, and this is a unit that will detect microwave radiation, radiation. It detects electronic fields, and it detects the frequencies that you need to be concerned about in your home. And I'm going to get one, and I'm going to use it and tell you exactly how it works and my findings. So I just wanted to let you know that I plan to pursue this and let you know, because as you've heard me say, in my house, I took the wiring and I encased the Romex cable in metal within the walls, and then I painted our walls of our farmhouse when we were building it many years ago with copper dust. I bought copper dust on eBay, 5 pounds of it, mixed it with the primer, and I knew where all the wiring was because I wired the house with our son. And I want to keep the electromagnetic radiation from affecting us. So the headboard of, where all the headboards would be, I took extra precautions to make sure that the electromagnetic radiation from the electric wiring, the 117 and 220 volt wiring in the house, would be shielded so that it would not have the traditional effects on us. Rick, your thoughts? Did I lose Rick?
No, you didn't. I'm here.
Okay, Rick, so what I did, I talked to Dr. Norman Shealy, by the way, advocates the use of the tri-field meter. He has one. He purchased his many years ago, and he found out that the amount of electromagnetic radiation in his clinic in Springfield, Missouri, the background electromagnetic radiation was so high in his parking lot of his clinic that it chased him right out of Springfield, Missouri. He didn't want to be anywhere near there, so he moved his clinic out in the middle of nowhere, way north of the city, onto his farm. So that's how concerned he was. So, Rick,
Norm's very knowledgeable in these things. This whole concept is extremely important. We live in an environment now that's toxic, and you can't see it, so it's out of mind, out of sight. But like radiation, it will kill you.
Rick, I'll tell you what I've done. I've done a little experiment. I took a Netgear router, a 2.4 gigahertz router, out of one of the rooms of one of the people I was visiting, and I asked their permission to move it to a remote corner in their house, and I put a plant in front of it. And I did it for two reasons. One, I wanted to absorb some of the microwave radiation with the leaves of this plant. The other reason I did is I want to see what happens to this plant. So I'm going to get a report.
I can tell you what's going to happen.
That's what I'd like to know. And I'll tell you what, I believe, as Dr. Norman Shealy would say, I believe that the electromagnetic radiation that is surrounding us is really making us nuts. I think it's making us hostile, and I think it's really contributing to this aggressive behavior that we see in people with uniforms. I really believe it. I keep going back there. But I think those guys are being affected by this. Rick, years ago, these guys used to be given radar guns, and they would be given, they'd be in ticket contests. Let's see who can get the most tickets this month. And these guys would sit on the side of the road. I'm talking about cops with handheld radar guns, and they would have this radar gun, and they would aim it at us. And it makes me angry when these guys aim that damaging electromagnetic radiation toward me. They can do it to me, but I can't just sit with a microwave tube and aim it at them. I'd probably be arrested. But they can do it to me, and then when they're done, they put it in their lap. And the thing that happened to these cops, these unsuspecting law enforcers, is they became victims of testicular cancer, Rick, from putting these...
Yeah.
So I mean... It's clear. It's absolutely clear that this stuff is dangerous. So, Rick, let's take it back to water. Let's talk about how we heat food in a microwave oven. What really happens?
The radiation, the actual vibration of the wavelengths, cause water more than any other item. That means if it's dry, it's not going to be excitable. You need water in something, and it excites it. And it excites it to such a point that the water starts to boil from the inside out. That means that you are doing a complete destructuring of the memory or structure of the water itself. There are layers called easy zones. These are the layers where the positive, that's what you call surface tension. It reduces surface tension. That's a good way to look at it. It reduces surface tension down to zero from the inside out. And it does the same thing for biological processes, including your liver and spleen and other parts of your body where water is essential for its proper action. And that's why that plant will die, because it will not recognize the destructured water as water. And as such, because of the destructuring, that's how osmosis, that's how photosynthesis works. It uses the structure of the water to be able to move nutrients through the plant. And when you microwave it, or even expose it to those bandwidths, it destructures it to such a point that while it's water, it is not able to be used as water, because it is the structure of water that makes it useful, like being near a waterfall. And health is right in there, because every single point in your body has water in it. And that destructuring of it means that those processes can't work. And I would think that the choice of water in your body is way more important than your food choices, which we talk about Monsanto and GMOs and all the rest of it. And I don't think we have a clue yet just exactly how important this is. And now with the sun doing its classic thing of every 24 years, 27 years of maximum solar things where there is a pole shift in the sun. This is going to affect behavior just like the moon.
Rick, I have a regret with the home that we built in the Ozark Mountains in Missouri. Okay. We lost Vinny. I'm not sure what happened, but one of the things that I wanted to do when we built the house was put a steel roof on it, kind of like a barn roof. And it really didn't go with the architecture. And for some silly reason, I decided that we'll just go with, architectural type shingles. I will not do that again. I certainly would. If we re-roof, it's going to be a steel roof to help keep out the electromagnetic radiation. But Rick, I'm really concerned about it. From the smart meters, from the cell phones, from the all of the electromagnetic radiation that's around us. And I honestly believe that it is affecting us. I think it's making us irritable. And I was looking at the attitudes of the people in some of the homes, and what I found out, this is a very small sample, but I really honestly believe that after watching the people in these homes, after moving the routers in their homes to the farthest corner where they do not spend much time at all, I see more smiles. Interesting. Do you think that's possible?
Well, then there's the sun and what it's doing. The whole thing adds up to toxicity, and we have to become more aware of where we're living and why.
Mm-hmm. Well, Rick, there's the cell phones. Okay, I'm talking about just a typical.
Cell phones are at the top of the list. I no longer carry a cell phone. I will carry a track phone for deep emergencies. It's expensive to use. I don't use it. My minutes last because I use it for an emergency. I do not use it as a way of life. And as such, just that simple choice difference is going to save me $200 a month alone. And, paying to be toxic, that's crazy.
Well, yeah.
And I think there's better ways to do things. Mm-hmm. I don't have all the answers. I have something else to share with you that's kind of interesting.
Okay.
But we'll do that on another segment.
Okay.
Really interesting. Hollywood has now got a couple of writers doing my life story. As a pilot.
Hey, that's Rick. You want to do that right now, and then we'll talk about Fukushima leaking?
Well, it's premature. I was called by a writer yesterday. I've had conference calls with Hollywood, and they're starving for a new series, and this one is I'm not at liberty to give you the name of it, but it'll be essentially like Spook Central, and it's going to start out in the 50s with my childhood.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
And Rick,
and it's going to be a reality show. It's not going to be hokey pokey like Warehouse 13. It's going to be the literal, factual things about when I, met Harry Truman, that kind of thing, as probably the last president of the United States. That man had to make decisions about alien contact that, nobody's ever going to understand.
Rick, I'm so excited for you. I really am, because I think you've got a really, really interesting story. And there are the people who know you best recently are those who are in our classroom. And Matt, since you're going to be on TV, it's a great time to get your autograph, but while we can still get it.
Stop that. No. Stay tuned on all of this. I haven't even signed non-disclosures with them yet. Mm-hmm. So, but the writer, he did call, and he's asking details. He thinks the idea of going back into the 50s, that's when the government changed.
It did. It really did. And Eisenhower warned us about it. And by the way, I was at Eisenhower's little project in West Virginia where he built a golf course. I'm talking about President Eisenhower built a golf course, and underneath the golf course was a 550-room secret bunker for our Congress critters to be safe. And he built the interstate highway 64 that would let them escape from Washington, D.C., all the way into this bunker where they could do 120 miles an hour on the highway with bank curves and so forth. They put a rail system in. They put in a place where you could land a C-5 helicopter right next to it. I was there. I saw the whole thing. I saw the smokestack. I saw the satellite antenna. It's like, probably close to 90 feet in diameter. I saw it.
I wonder what the hot spots are down there.
Yeah, and they have they have diesel generator could run it, and probably tens of thousands of gallons of fuel. But anyway, so it was there. I saw it, and anyway, Rick, I'm so glad that you're going to be on. If this all happens, that'd be great.
They're just doing a pilot on it. It may not fly. They just found that my life has been pretty interesting, that I discovered in 1970 that the Cold War was actually a false flag. That was when I found those 3 secret documents. That was a pivot point for me when I discovered that the Cold War with the Soviet Union was all fake. There was a joint manned expedition to Mars. How does that work when Khrushchev is taking his shoe and banging it on a podium?
Rick, can you tell us a little bit about that? And let's get in. And after that, let's talk about that to the bottom of the hour, and then let's talk about the radioactivity from leaking from Fukushima to the world's ocean.
In 1970, I was a reader for a Boeing company. That means I had top secret clearance with vault permits. That means above top secret. And I encountered 3 secret documents in my readings, one of which told me who I was. In 1964, the Mariner had used devices and concepts that I had developed as a high school kid. That was when I realized why I was a reader. They wanted me to just have full disclosure and be able to go anywhere I wanted to with the knowledge of trying to connect one dot with another. The second document indicated it discovered water on Mars. The second document was in 1967. 1965, they detonated a nuclear warhead on the south pole of Mars in their first attempt to terraform it. It did not work. That report even indicated it did not work. And in 1968, 1 year before we went to the moon, there was a joint manned expedition to Mars. Now, this is all during the same period that Antarctica was still acting as a Nazi base, and that was where they did that nuclear weapon on the south pole of Antarctica in their attempt to knock out the Nazi base as well. I saw these things and started to realize that nothing that we really know is true, and that there's like a secret history of what's really going on with what you call, conspiracy. And it made me realize that, like, the war in Iraq wasn't real. It was to get the Stargate. And the public, it's like there's 2 kinds of histories out there, and it's amazing. I opened my eyes. That's what they want to write the show about, are these disclosures of reality, of what the real history of America is about, and how I, in my journeys, made those discoveries for myself, like you are.
Rick, what the heck is wrong with us in 1965 detonating a nuclear device on the south pole of Mars? Didn't we think that maybe we could reorganize the planetary alignments and mess up our own planet? I mean, what are we thinking? Dr. Richard Allen Miller, let's talk about that when we come back, and then into Fukushima and the leaking radiation. Dr. Richard Allen Miller, Vincent Finelli, USAPrepares.com. We'll be right back. You know that you're being tracked by your cell phone. You know that you're being tracked by a lot of electronic devices. Even brand new televisions have cameras in them. I'm not kidding. We posted on the website several days ago. Yeah, the new televisions, Rick, have cameras in them, and they can be remotely deployed to watch you watching TV. I'm not kidding.
Or watching pornography or watching whatever, huh? That's interesting.
Well, I just, I'll tell you what, in all the homes I've been going to, I'm looking at their computers, I'm saying, hey, there's a camera on this. You need to shut this thing off. If you're not using your computer right this second, you need to shut it off and have the computers aimed where they have these cameras. Either put a piece of tape over the camera and also the microphone. I mean, they can turn on remotely the microphone and the camera and watch
even
you.
Your cell phone can record even when it's turned off, or your house phone can record what's being said in the room.
Right, and I'm looking up Roy Birdsong's number right now, because when I get back to Missouri, I'm dumping my iPhone, and I'm going to get from him one of these disposable, if you will, cell phones.
Yeah,
he also has some.
I went down to the local store and I bought myself, like Radio Shack, and I bought myself a $10 disposable phone that I can put track phone minutes on it.
Mm-hmm.
And just throw it away if I want to.
Right, and Roy has a plan where you can, for $8 a month, you can get cell phone service, and you can register that phone in any name you want. He'll say, okay, we need the name, and you can say Marilyn Monroe, Anthony Soprano, whatever you want, and for $8 a month you get 250 minutes, 250 texts, or $80 a year. And my plan is to buy from, I asked him to get some phones that have the tracking mechanism where you can shut it off. They're older phones, they're not new, and you can shut it off so that you can't be tracked. But what's happening, Rick, is now the operating system on the new smartphones is when you download that, the Android operating system looks for local Wi-Fi. Now, where I am right this very minute, I believe there are 11 Wi-Fi networks that if I had the passwords, I could tap into. You know, they're all secured. But what Google's doing is using those Wi-Fi networks because they know where they are, and they can use them to help find out where I am. I mean, they can find out.
There were some things on Facebook where they were showing how you could do electronic stalking by the posts and photographs that you were using. And it was real creepy to realize just how invasive the system has possibilities of being.
And we put a post on the website this morning about how in England they have a new PayPal system where your photograph can be used. So you walk into, let's say, a restaurant, and you log into their application. You say, okay, I'm here. And then your bill is automatically updated to your account using your social image, your face.
You know, of course, that Europe is way ahead of us in this form of surveillance, that if you were to go to Holland or Iceland, that they know everything about you, everywhere. Now, that's a smaller country, but those cameras are everywhere. I went on we have a webcam on downtown Grants Pass that's 24/7, and I was able to go back and actually watch the crash and see my vehicle and where it was in the whole of things. It was very interesting.
Well, what I'm going to do is, when my driver's license comes up for renewal, I'm going to grow a beard, and I'm serious, Rick. I'm serious. I'm going to put lines on my face as if I have
Makes you look like
wrinkles.
You're an Iraqi, huh?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I'm going to grow my hair long. It's going to be in my face. I'm going to squint. I'm not going to smile. I'm going to make a scowl. I'm going to do everything I can to not look like me. And class, if you'd like Roy Birdsong's number, choose your own wireless, Springfield, Missouri. He can help you with your questions about how to be private. 417-823-3715. 417-823-3715. That's Roy Birdsong. He's a USAPrepares.com instructor. He's been to all of our expos. 417-823-3715 if you want him to help you with your anonymity.
Yeah, with mine. I've gotten rid of my Android. I will no longer. I can't use it anyway. My eyes are so bad, and my fingers are so blunt that to try to do any of the apps on that is almost impossible for me.
So, Rick, yes, and I'm getting rid of my iPhone. Enough's enough. Rick, 1965, we detonated a nuke on the surface of, or South Pole of Mars. Why would we do such a thing if we could...
Try
change.
create an atmosphere, taking all that ice that was there and making it an atmosphere. That was the intent. It didn't work, but that was a first attempt at terraforming Mars. Living underground in tunnels, man's been doing that since the Underground Railroads. You know, I mean, that's how you got along to avoid observance. And, of course, on Mars, there is no atmosphere, which means you have no radiation shield. One of the projects that we're doing with the Mars project is taking two geodesic domes, one inside the other, and the one inside is structurally very solid, so it can handle pumping that slush ice water in its weight and creating a radiation shield of water, which would absorb hardcore radiation from the sun so that we could use the sunlight for power, growing plants, that kind of thing, like we would in space. That's why the geodesic dome is so important. It is structurally able to hold that kind of volume of water.
So, Rick, what happened to that radiation? Is it circling Mars? Where is
you mean the nuclear bomb that they have? I don't know. I don't know anything about any of that. I don't even know about the one that they detonated down in Antarctica. But they did. It was all Kennedy, and that was the whole idea. He threatened Russia. Oh, he's going to do it, you know, with the Bay of Pigs. And so it happened in Antarctica, and I saw the hole in this, punched in a big hole into the Antarctica to open up that tunnel that was there. I mean, that cavern, that huge cavern. There's a huge cavern there. The cavern's all along the east coast where you are right now.
So, Rick, when we went to Antarctica, and you're talking about the U.S. Navy was there.
The Nazis didn't go to Argentina. They went to Antarctica. They dug in with what was then considered the super bunker of the world. There was no way you could rout them out. And they went in with a nuclear weapon, and they punched a hole in it, and then the RAF and the Americans and the Russians went in to do the mop-up. And that's when they discovered a second set of underground caverns below 100 miles in the mantle, below the mantle of the Earth. The fact that we're not speaking German right now is most likely because I think Germans, when they tried to escape, ran into something already down there, and that stopped that nonsense, probably. Kind of like in the abyss, where they have at the very bottom angels.
Rick, how can we find out more information about this? Is this something that you can share with us?
Just punch it in the internet. It's been on Alex Jones and other things. It's all over. Douglas Dietrich, others have talked about it. Now it's, you know, pretty well known that the Nazis, whether or not Hitler himself died in Germany or escaped to Antarctica, that part I have no idea. What I do know is the Nazi base that I saw there was huge. It could house 19 submarines. And I saw another base there that was from the 14th century. It appeared to be Viking. It was in ruins. You know, it had been there 14th century. Antarctica is lined with warm springs of waters from the molten core, and it's quite habitable.
What about sunlight, Rick?
That's the way I got brought in. I was not lead on that project, but the reason they brought me in was the bioluminescence. It did not have sunlight because it's an underground cave, but it had light from luminescent from some of the molds and other kinds of things. They were luminescing there. And with the heat and the light, they had weather. I saw clouds. I saw clouds in this underground cavern. It's very, very strange. The Earth and the whole concept of the hollow Earth is, has had for me, a reality. That's going to be one of the shows that they do. And the whole thing is going to be around not fiction, but fact as discovered by me when I was working Navy intelligence and the different things I discovered. You know, there's a lot of paranormal things going on that we dismiss as not real. whirling dervish, the ability to stop bleeding and things like that, where you can do things to your body. I don't understand any of it. This is all part of what my life of discovery, trying to understand what I see and make sense of it, how to integrate it into my own personal life to evolve.
Rick, when you talked about luminescence, if I'm not mistaken, that really came into vogue where people were really talking about bioluminescence back in the late 60s, if I'm not mistaken, early 70s. Is that the time frame?
Yes, that's correct. That's what I had gone to graduate school in. It was a side form of resonant physics. And bioluminescence is where you can generate light from chemical processes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, Rick, we said we would talk about the radioactivity from Fukushima. And I posted an article. There's a post.
One of your listeners posted this interesting thing on my website, on the timelines on Facebook, on Fukushima, and it has some pictures. It's of what's radiating. And right now, a lot of things in our food chain on the West Coast are now of extreme concern. Milk, for example. The cesium-137 levels just in San Francisco today are 100% above EPA standards. And FDA says not to worry. Those numbers are arbitrary. I don't believe any of it.
Rick, let's talk about the leakage and the underground water from under the reactors that's leaking into the ocean off Japan, and all the oceans are interconnected. And what does that mean? Rick Miller, physicist, USAPrepares.com. We'll be right back. Miller's with us, and you can reach him at oak-publishing.com. oak-publishing.com. And
I have to apologize. My primary website is down. It was hacked. I know who hacked it now. I've got that guy's name, and I'm going to court with him. And but he has done me, and actually, it's probably a benefit. The way I'm choosing to look at it, my site was starting to go into doom and gloom, and it's time for a facelift and to change what I post and why. And so rather than try to frighten people with coronal mass ejections, stuff like that, I'm going to try to be a little more empowering and take a whole different kind of direction on that. And that's part of the journey I've made.
Rick, on Monday I've got a meetup class. I want to thank the Dollarhite family, John and Judy Dollarhite, for helping me while I'm doing this investigative reporting in Virginia. And they've been managing the meetups. So I really appreciate your help, John and Judy Dollarhite. And Jason.
They're really nice people. I got a chance to get to know them even a little bit better, and their son. And it's just, they're a remarkable family.
They are, and Rick, they faced down the U.S. Department of Agriculture with a $6.19 million fine. So
I understand. This is crazy, trying to intimidate, but with penalties and things like that financially. Mm-hmm. It's a shame that our world has gone this way.
Mm-hmm. And we are announcing a rally where we're coming to the assistance of a farmer in Michigan. So we'll be announcing that next week, some of us. And they're actually surprised. They're actually surprised that USAPrepares.com is traveling a long distance to rally to the support of a farmer who is being attacked by the United States government. But we'll be talking about that next week. Rick, I also want to announce that if you know of a trucker, class, if you know of a trucker who wants to share experiences on the road, what it's like, what he or she is seeing across the country as we go into the abyss, we're looking for a truck driving instructor, one who will share what he or she sees, and also an insurance broker who wants to teach us about the insurance industry and what's happening there. Rick, you're talking about Fukushima, and so there's an underground leak. The radioactive water, the coolant water from under the reactor in the groundwater is leaking into the ocean. All of the oceans are connected. Milk is being contaminated at twice the rate.
It's the iodine that's going to cause this problem.
Okay, let's talk about
iodine 129.
What do we look? We only have a couple minutes, Rick. What do we look for, and what do we do about it?
To measure something like that would require a very large device that counts atoms. That would be a mass spectrometer. Other devices, smaller devices that are available at most universities, what we're talking about is such minute quantities of the radiation that will affect our life that it's a very difficult thing to measure with just something off the shelf.
Rick, but what do we do to protect ourselves? Do we avoid milk? Do we avoid
water? That's the first banyan, and then, of course, your food selection. And I wouldn't eat anything from the West Coast, from the sea.
Okay. And there are those who have said, no, it's okay, that radioactivity is never going to get here. I don't think that's true. I think it's here.
No, it isn't true. And if it's even a tenth of the covertness of conspiracy, of disclosure that I found when I was, early in my sciences, it's a scary proposition to realize all those people in Japan that were apologizing for what happened and the way they did it. It's like samurai. It's crazy.
Okay, class, so avoid seafood from the West Coast. Avoid seafood from the West Coast. I'm not eating any seafood. The minute that it happened, we stopped buying seafood. We really did. Richard Allen Miller, thanks so much for being with us. And it's oak-publishing.com if you'd like to get his books. You can get them autographed before he goes to Hollywood. Rick, thanks so much for being with us. I'm Vin Finelli. This is USAPrepares.com. Above all, honesty and integrity. Honesty and integrity. What happens next is up to you.